Alright, let's talk about this. The world right now feels like it's holding its breath, waiting for something big to happen, and it is. We are talking about a situation in Eastern Europe that has everyone on edge. This isn't just a small fight in a faraway place. This is the Russia-Ukraine war. Think of it like a global chess game, but the pieces are real people, real cities, and real lives. The decisions made in Moscow, Kyiv, and now, apparently, Mar-a-Lago affect everyone, from the price of your bread to the safety of the entire planet. It's about the rules that have kept the world mostly peaceful since the last big world war. NATO, which is a group of Western countries including the United States, says those rules must be protected. Russia, on the other hand, says those rules were made to keep it down. So now we have a massive standoff. So what is this big deadline all about? Donald Trump, who is now back in the global spotlight, has made a very bold move. He announced a 12-day ultimatum directed squarely at Russian President Vladimir Putin. The deadline is set for August 13th, 2025. It's basically a challenge. Trump is saying, you have less than 2 weeks to end this war. This isn't a suggestion or a polite request from a diplomat. This is a loud, clear, and very public demand. It has completely changed the conversation around the war, moving it from a slow, grinding conflict to a ticking clock drama. The core of Trump's demand is simple. Russia must stop all fighting and begin a full withdrawal of its troops from all Ukrainian territories. This includes not just the areas Russia has taken since 2022, but also Crimea, which Russia took over back in 2014. It's a huge ask. It's basically asking Putin to admit defeat and give up everything he has fought for over the past several years. Trump hasn't said exactly what will happen if Putin refuses, but the threat is clear. He has hinted at unprecedented consequences and a response so strong it will make your head spin. Now let's talk about the weapons. A huge part of this story is the support Ukraine has been getting from other countries. The United States and its NATO allies have been sending a massive amount of military aid to Ukraine. We're talking about everything from simple rifles and bullets to very advanced high-tech systems. Think of long-range rockets that can hit targets far behind enemy lines, powerful tanks that can lead an attack, and sophisticated air defense systems that can shoot down Russian missiles and drones. This support has been a lifeline for Ukraine, allowing it to fight back against a much larger and more powerful army. The reason for this support is straightforward. NATO and the US see Russia's invasion as a major threat to the international order. They believe that if Russia is allowed to succeed in Ukraine, it might not stop there. Other countries, especially those in Eastern Europe that were once under Moscow's control, could be next. This flood of weapons has had a huge impact on the war. The Ukrainian army, armed with Western weapons and fighting with incredible determination, managed to stop the Russian advance and even push it back in some areas. But this support is not without its own problems and risks. Russia sees these weapon shipments as the West directly participating in the war. So how is Russia reacting to all of this, especially to Trump's new deadline? Well, from Moscow, the view is very different. The Kremlin has publicly dismissed Trump's ultimatum as political grandstanding. A spokesperson for President Putin called it loud but empty noise and said that Russia does not respond to threats. They are trying to project an image of strength and calm as if this new pressure doesn't bother them at all. They insist that their special military operation in Ukraine will continue until all of its goals are achieved, no matter what anyone in the West says or does. But what are those goals? Vladimir Putin has laid out his demands many times, and they haven't really changed. First, he wants Ukraine to be a neutral country. This means Ukraine can never join NATO or any other military alliance that Russia sees as a threat. He sees NATO's expansion towards Russia's borders as a direct attack on his country's security. Second, he demands that Ukraine officially recognize Crimea as part of Russia and accept the independence of the regions in eastern Ukraine that Russia now controls. From Putin's perspective, this war is not about conquering Ukraine for the sake of it. He sees it as a defensive struggle against the West, particularly the United States. In his view, he is fighting to restore Russia's rightful place as a great world power and to protect Russian-speaking people in Ukraine whom he claims were being mistreated. Putin has staked his entire legacy on this conflict. To retreat now without achieving his key goals would be seen as a catastrophic failure, not just for his country but for him personally. So, let's look at what is actually happening on the ground in Ukraine. The fighting right now is, honestly, brutal, slow, and incredibly destructive. The front line stretches for hundreds of miles, mostly in the east and south of the country. This is not a war of fast movement anymore. It's really become a war of attrition. That means both sides are just trying to wear the other down with constant attacks. It's a battle of artillery, drones, and trenches. In fact, it looks more like World War I than a modern high-tech conflict. Soldiers are fighting for control of small villages, fields, and even single buildings, and every inch of ground is paid for with many lives. On the Ukrainian side, the army is still showing incredible resilience. Boosted by the continuous flow of Western weapons and intelligence, they've become very skilled at defense. They use drones to spot Russian positions and then hit them with precise artillery strikes. They have also launched several counter-offensives, trying to take back territory that Russia occupies. However, they face huge challenges. They're running low on soldiers and ammunition. The constant fighting is exhausting, and every day brings more casualties. On the Russian side, the military has adapted its strategy. After failing to take Kiev at the start of the war, they're now focused on a slow grinding advance in the east. They're using their advantage in numbers and artillery to overwhelm Ukrainian defenses. They fire thousands of shells every day, destroying everything in their path before sending their troops forward. Recent major events on the battlefield show just how intense this struggle is. At the same time, Ukraine has been using long-range drones and missiles to attack targets deep inside Russia, including military bases and oil refineries. With so much fighting, you might ask, why aren't they talking about peace? The truth is, they have tried. There have been several rounds of peace talks since the war began, but they have all failed. Right now, meaningful negotiations are completely stalled. Both sides are so far apart on the most important issues that they can't even agree on a starting point for a conversation. It's like two people arguing in different languages about completely different things. They are stuck in a deadlock, and neither side believes it can get what it wants at the negotiating table. Ukraine's position is very clear and firm. President Zelensky has put forward a peace plan that demands a complete withdrawal of all Russian troops from every inch of Ukrainian territory, including Crimea. He also wants Russia to pay for the massive damage it has caused and for Russian leaders to be held accountable for war crimes. For Ukraine, this is a matter of survival and justice. They see any compromise on territory as a reward for Russia's aggression, which would only encourage more attacks in the future. Russia, of course, completely rejects these demands. As we discussed, Putin demands that Ukraine accept the new territorial realities. This fundamental disagreement over territory is the biggest reason why peace talks have gone nowhere. Both sides believe that time is on their side. Ukraine hopes that more Western weapons and continued pressure on Russia will eventually force Moscow to retreat. Until one side changes its mind or is forced to, there is simply no common ground for peace. This war isn't just being fought with tanks and missiles, it's also a massive economic battle. From the very beginning, the United States and its allies hit Russia with some of the toughest sanctions in history. The goal was to cripple Russia's economy and make it impossible for Putin to pay for the war. They cut Russian banks off from the global financial system, froze billions of dollars of Russian money held in other countries, and stopped selling high-tech goods to Russia. The idea was to put so much economic pain on Moscow that it would be forced to stop the fighting. These sanctions have definitely hurt Russia. The Russian economy has struggled. However, Russia has not collapsed. Putin quickly moved to reorient his country's economy. He started selling a lot more oil and gas to countries like China and India. He also put the entire Russian economy on a war footing, with factories working around the clock to produce weapons and ammunition. But this economic war has not just affected Russia. It has caused problems for the entire world. When Russia, a huge exporter of oil, gas, and grain, was hit with sanctions, prices for energy and food shot up everywhere. Countries in Europe that depended heavily on Russian gas had to scramble to find new sources, leading to an energy crisis. In Africa and the Middle East, a shortage of Ukrainian and Russian grain caused food prices to spike. This is where Trump's ultimatum adds another layer of economic tension. His threat of unprecedented consequences likely includes even more severe economic measures. The world economy is already fragile, and the uncertainty of the next 12 days is making markets nervous. A peaceful resolution could bring stability and lower prices, but a major escalation could trigger a new global economic crisis, affecting the wallets of people thousands of miles away from the fighting. And so, here we are. August 1st, 2025. The clock has officially started ticking on Donald Trump's 12-day ultimatum to Vladimir Putin. The world is now balanced on a knife's edge, caught between the hope for a sudden peace and the fear of a catastrophic war. The next 12 days are not just another chapter in this long and painful conflict. They could be the final chapter, for better or for worse. Every news report, every statement from a world leader, and every movement on the battlefield will be watched with incredible attention. The tension is real, and it is global. The two paths forward could not be more different. One path leads to peace. In this scenario, the pressure from Trump's deadline, combined with the heavy costs of the war, could actually force Putin to reconsider. Perhaps behind the scenes, secret talks are happening. The other path is much darker. If the deadline of August 13th arrives and Putin has not budged, Trump will face a critical choice. Will he back down and lose credibility, or will he follow through on his threat of unprecedented consequences? An escalation could mean many things. A full economic blockade of Russia, massive cyber attacks, or even direct military involvement. Any of these actions could trigger a direct confrontation between Russia and the United States, two nuclear-armed superpowers. This is the nightmare scenario. A path that could lead to a conflict bigger and more destructive than anything the world has seen in 80 years. As we wait, the uncertainty is the hardest part. The fate of millions of Ukrainians hangs in the balance. The security of Europe is on the line. The stability of the global economy is at risk. And the fundamental rules that govern how countries interact are being tested like never before. We are living through a moment that will be studied by historians for centuries to come. The world is watching Moscow and Washington, holding its collective breath. 12 days. That's all the time we have until we find out which path the world will take. Peace or war. The countdown has begun.